Well, good evening, Dr. Ferdinand, and to all the members of this great and wonderful movement, the People's Opposition. Um, I am presenting tonight with a rather heavy heart. Believe me,
I believe you.
I have a very heavy heart because this morning and in fact over the weekend,
Yes.
listening to the news, and
Yes.
hearing that 83-year-old lady this
Hmm.
morning
Yes.
relating her story,
Yes.
you know, my heart sank and my eyes flooded with water
Mm.
because we, the senior citizens of this country, who built this country,
Yes.
we are now being treated with contempt, disrespect,
Mm.
and benign neglect as if we don't matter and if
Yes.
we have not contributed anything to this country. And so it is really with a heavy heart that I speak with you tonight. And I'm going to ask Dave. Dave, would you please put up those to that video, well, the picture that I sent you. Now, please put it up. And I want to explain to the loyal opposition why my heart is so heavy. You see that picture there, Dr. Nichols?
Hmm.
That is my door, the my back door to the backyard. It has been like that for the past 2 years. I have not used it for 2 years because I was away from home and I came back, found the door could not open from the inside. So I went outside to check to see what was happening. The door was damaged. In fact, when I came back in and I looked around, from my very slippers that I would use to walk through the house was gone.
Wow.
My
Wow.
slippers, I had a piggy bank where I would put my change. When you go to the supermarket or to the shop, you get your change.
Yes.
I had a
Yes.
piggy bank there with all of that. Had a weed whacker, brand new weed whacker. My television and other things were missing. Called the carpenter and we fixed it. And then in another week, the next week, what you're seeing there now occurred. You see the gray area there? The All of that gray area there, that is metal that we had placed over the lock
Mhm. Yes.
and to prevent anything from going in to prise the door open. Within 2 weeks, that was the final result. That was the second. So that when I heard the old lady this morning and the others, and then
Oh,
that
yes. Yes.
despicable crime where a young man was shot while after viewing his brother's body, you know, utter disrespect. So we are in a very, very serious situation tonight. And I would like to follow the theme blueprint for crime reduction, an alternative response. We in Barbados need to come up with our own approach to fighting crime in Barbados. Now, I laud the police force and I am grateful for what the police service is doing for us. But we need to do more than use the police or burden the police with all of these activities. I definitely think, Dr. Nichols, that the time has come for us to decolonize governance in Barbados. That is the first uh, initiative that we need to take in order to reduce crime. Because don't forget, um, the police service or the police force back then was introduced somewhere after 1834, after the abolition of slavery, and the plantocracy needed someone or some organization to keep the ex-slaves in check. And so the police force was born to do that. I am saying, Dr. Nichols, that as we today in 2025, we need to look at different ways of socializing and training our young men, our people, and we need to find ways and means to reduce crime and violence in the country. Um, so, using brute force, arming the police, bringing out the defense force, yes, they serve their purpose, but I think we need to do more than that. I think that the first thing we need to do, if I to follow up on what you said, I think the first step in reducing crime in Barbados is to get rid of the government. The government needs to go. The government has lost all moral authority to govern
Yes,
this country.
absolutely. Totally agree with you, Glenn.
The
Can I hear me,
government
Glenn?
has no moral
Nigel.
authority, no legal, nothing, nothing. They have lost all moral authority to govern this country. And if we want to really take charge of our destiny, and if we really want to reduce crime and violence and really pursue equitable economic development and social development, I think one of the first things we have to do is to get rid of this government.
Yes, totally agree.
Okay, and
Totally
then
agree.
uh, so and then in terms of fighting crime, I think that we need to look at ourselves as an African people. We have to decolonize the consciousness, the soul, the spirit, the body. We have to decolonize ourselves because you see, all of the social ills, all of the problems and the crime and the violence, they are coming from the sickness that came upon us under colonialism, under slavery. And until we reach the stage where we can recognize the point that we are a sick and broken people and take deliberate and decisive steps to heal ourselves from the sickness of slavery and colonization, and then redefine who we are as a people, we are not going to solve any of our problems. So first of all, we have to decolonize governance. We have to decolonize the consciousness of descendants of slaves. In other words, let me put it this way: Black Barbadians or African Barbadians, we have to decolonize our consciousness because we have been corrupted and destroyed by the colonial system. And until we can reverse the sickness of colonization and enslavement, we will not. We will not achieve anything good. We will not be able to rid ourselves of crime and violence. No. And the sad thing about that, Dr. Nichols and comrades, is that when you really look at, you make a comparison between um, Barbadians of African ancestry, and you look at our attitude, conduct, and behavior towards each other, and our life chances in this country, Barbados. And when you compare what is happening to us to what is going on with other ethnic groups in Barbados, you will see that what we are suffering, they are not.
That is
And
so true.
we need to ask ourselves why.
Why? Why? Hmm.
And we need to investigate why it is that a young man or two young men would see it fit and proper to arm themselves and go to a funeral home to shoot another man. Something
It's
is
wrong.
drastically wrong with us. And we have to come to the point where we recognize that we are sick and broken and desperately in need of healing. Now, I would say, Dr. Nichols, while I laud and I appreciate um, what the church or what part of the church is doing, I don't think that Western religion, and by Western religion I mean Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, I do not think that they have the capacity to help us to heal ourselves and to redirect ourselves as an African descended people. And this is not anti religion. I'm not anti church. I'm not anti anybody. I don't hate anybody. But I am saying that if we are to truly heal ourselves and to restore our dignity and humanity, we're going to have to return to our African spirituality. And one aspect of that spirituality, I mentioned it last night, the law of Ma'at, the law of Ma'at. Okay, and I think it was Cheikh Anta Diop in one of his books. He said, and this is documented, that if we need to return to ancient Egypt or Kemet. It's not Egypt, it's Kemet. We need to return to ancient Kemet because in returning to ancient Kemet, we will be able we will find the avenue and the solution and the all of the system. We will find what is needed for us to bring healing and deliverance to our people. Okay, so these are all part of the blueprint for crime reduction in Barbados. Decolonization of the African consciousness, the African mind, the African soul, decolonization of governance, and instituting a government system that is more suited to our needs. Because remember, what we call democracy is not democracy. This is Western, this is a Western style of control and domination. We need to go back to the governance that we are accustomed to. All right. And the other thing, what I also want to say, and I don't want to, oh, my time is almost up. And
Flying like a bird, flying like a
yes,
bird.
yes. But what I am saying, in healing ourselves, we then have to, and I think I referred to it some time ago, we have to go back to developing a structured moral consciousness. Now, do you think that if those young men who shot the young man at the outside the funeral home, those who robbed those elderly citizens, okay, those who are committing so many murders in Barbados, Do you think that if they had a structured moral consciousness, that they would be doing these kind of things? And I'm saying that structured moral consciousness must emanate and be grounded in African spirituality. Because why? Judaism, as it stands, is contaminated. Christianity is contaminated. Islam is inappropriate. And the only way we are going to have a structural moral consciousness is for us to go back to African spirituality, the law of Ma'at, go back to ancient Kemet, see how we structured our society, develop human consciousness, socialization, and governance, and then take examples from ancient Kemet, but also and I'm closing now, as I refer theory to traditional African constitutional law and so forth. When we can go back to those areas and see how we did it in the past, then I think it will equip us to repair ourselves and to chart our way forward out of this mess that we are in. My time is up.
Yes. Well, I want to thank you for that, Nigel. But of course, you would expect me as a Christian minister to disagree with you on a couple of points there. That would be expected. Because I will tell you that I don't know about Judaism and I don't know about what we would call Christianity, but I do know about Jesus Christ. And I will say to you that when I look at the history with regards to the people of Israel and Jesus Christ, they ain't Western, trust me. I appreciate the fact that we have had a lot of perversion over the years, a lot of compromise and that type of thing. But I will say that it is on record that Jesus Christ came and died for humanity, and that includes every single person on this planet. And if indeed we want to get healing and indeed we want to get deliverance, we're actually really going to have to accept what he has done for us and to move into that. And I have, as you would know, Nigel, I've had 40 something years of traveling the length and breadth of the Caribbean and seeing what he can do in the lives of men and women. As a matter of fact, I sit here as a product of his conversion, of the spirit's rebirth. And I agree with you that this country needs a spiritual rebirth. I wholeheartedly agree with you on that. As a matter of fact, Nigel, very quickly, I was coming over the hill by CBC and heading down toward the Bussa statue. Beautiful view when you're coming down there, the St. George Valley and all of that. And all of a sudden, I heard this voice say to me, the chains are still on his hands. The chains are still on his hands. And I thought to myself, what do you mean? Because I knew I was hearing somebody speak to me, but I was unsure because I'm looking at the statue. How do you mean the chains are still on his hands? And what the Lord responded to me was this: we are free economically and governmentally, but we are still enslaved in our mentality. And I would wholeheartedly agree with you that in the context of our consciousness, and we see this manifested all the time, we are still slaves to the colonial mindset. And there needs to be a major paradigm shift. I don't know if you've ever observed, Nigel, when workers are speaking to supervisors, do you ever notice that they never look at the supervisor? Their head is always down. And I refuse to lower my head when I'm talking to people because I am no longer a slave to the colonial mindset where I had a massa. And I know you know what I'm talking about. We have perpetuated a lot of this colonial stuff. And what I will say is that I see governance in Barbados, particularly as we are observing it today, as a perpetuation of massa slave coming into the big house and now taking charge and spreading what massa. And all we've done, Nigel, in terms of our independence and in terms of our republicanism, all we have done is to trade colonial masters. We have shifted from Europe, the United Kingdom, to the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. Both are who are controlled by the United States. And as you know, the man that pays the what is it, how does it go again? What's that saying? He who pays the what?
Piper
He who pays the piper
calls the
plays the
tune.
tune, you know? And what I'd like to know is your thoughts on this, because we know what our history has been, and this is why we should be strict guardians of our heritage. We need to know where we have come from. But your thoughts on the shift of the colonial master. It's no longer one politically, it is now economically and financially through these entities, Davos, the World Economic Forum, these entities, your thoughts in these areas in terms of how we deal with changing the governance and changing that consciousness.
Well, we first have to recognize that slavery never ended. There was just a strategic accommodation because the constant rebellion of the slaves, like, for example, Bassa in 1816 and Coffee in Guyana and the Maroons in Jamaica, the constant rebellion and wars of liberation made slavery or made it ungovernable, and therefore the massa came up with the concept of emancipation. But all that happened is that the chains were removed from the ankles and the wrists, and and was forged into our consciousness, our minds. Okay, so slavery never ended, and the economic dominance of slavery still continues to this day. In fact, look at the actions of the prime minister. Look at our government system today. Everything is just a mirror image of the colonial master. The only difference is the complexion of those who are in power right now.
Hmm.
But the
Hmm.
system remains.
Hmm. And of course, I mean, we are seeing this played out, and I draw people's attention to it on an ongoing basis, Nigel, where I am mindful of the fact of how much a global agenda is being imposed upon us in Barbados. If you take, for example, the recent, I had to smile, and I've posted a lot of it on my Facebook page, but we don't have the time to get into it tonight. But the recent loan borrowing of $500 million from the international market, where they've posted bonds or hoisted bonds, or however they put it, at 8% to pay off a loan at 4% with the International Monetary Fund. I'm not an economist, Nigel, but I think I have enough financial common sense. I was recently involved in assisting a couple of my children in terms of looking at loans and so on, to do what they want to do. And we saw, I had an email coming from a particular bank in the country looking really, really good. The offer was really fantastic. And I decided, you know what, and to assist my children, I'd go to the bank and I'd find out about the loan and so forth. And everything was going along well until I asked the question about the interest rate. And guess what the interest rate was, Nigel? The interest rate for their wonderful offer was 12.5%. 12.5%. And my son looked at me and said, nah, no way I'm doing that. I'm not borrowing no money at 12.5% to pay off money that I have already at 6%. My goodness, man, if a single young man, well, he's not single, he's married. If a married young man can tell you he ain't doing that for a personal loan, how in the name of God can our prime minister justify? And I saw the minister of agriculture attempting, and I hear he's supposed to be an expert on economics and finance. And I made a note, Nigel. Novices built the ark, and the expert built the Titanic. I think we all know what happened. I think we all know what happened. when the experts built the Titanic? How in the name, and instead of looking after the development of agriculture in Barbados and trying to come up with something, because I want to know what the Chinese are doing in this country with our agricultural land. I want to know what they're planting. These are questions they have to answer.
But you see, Dr. Nichols, this shows the complexity and the
Yes.
difficulty that we, as an independent or a republic, this shows the complexity of the whole thing. Because if indeed we are a republic, why are we still beholden and placing ourselves under the heels of others? Why are we doing that? So that to really solve our problems and to really get to the root of what is happening to us, what is going wrong, and to remove it so that we can progress and develop as human beings, we need to decolonize our consciousness.
Hmm. Hmm.
We need to liberate our spirit, our consciousness, our spirit, our soul, our heart. The whole African person has been colonized and is still oppressed. That is why the prime minister can do the things that she is doing. That is why cabinet can do the things that it is doing. Oh, giving the Afro-Exim Bank land that does not belong to the government but belong to the people. Are they not still slaves in spirit, in attitude, in consciousness? And therefore, I'm saying to get rid of that mindset, we have to decolonize and return to the source, which is our African roots, our African spirituality. And we will find solace and the capacity and the ability to heal, repair, and restore ourselves. That's my
Yeah,
that's
that's
my
that's yeah.